let me get 1 second here, y'all. Sorry, just want to make sure that I'm up and running. Alright, beautiful. Okay, welcome to the Beware the Moon podcast. My name is Hannah, and I'm the host of this podcast. You can't see very well, but I've got my ugly Christmas sweater on. Mine's a Godzilla version of the ugly sweater. Today, I'm going to be talking about Gremlins. First, before I do that, I want to say I am still sick, so I apologize on that. I'm probably going to cough at some points. Need to clear my throat like that at some points. But I've been sick for like 5 days. 6 days maybe, and I'm very sick of being sick and doing nothing, so I'm doing the podcast review anyway. I'm also sick of not talking about this movie because 'tis the season, man. Talking about Gremlins today. Like I said, love this movie. Childhood favorite of mine. Absolutely terrified me when I was a child, but I do have a fondness of this movie because of that. I'd also like to say, second of all, sorry for those of you who are listening to this recording. I'm going to be recording this, and I'm going to be putting it on Spotify, so if you're listening to it on Spotify, the podcast, instead of watching it on Rumble or on YouTube, I apologize again, because you're not going to get the live chat stuff, so if anyone does jump into the chat, you won't be getting that, but the easy fix to that is go to Rumble. Just join Rumble, just go over there even, and watch it. So yeah, talking about Gremlins, which came out in 1984, it is the third highest grossing film from that year. The first being Ghostbusters, second being Temple of Doom, third is Gremlins, as I said, and then fourth was actually Karate Kid. So a wonderful year for movies in general. This movie did exceptionally well, especially compared to how they thought it was going to perform. They did not expect the explosion that came after Gremlins, because you had, it's a horror film, and it's about Christmas, and then you had Temple of Doom coming out, you had Karate Kid, no one really anticipated the sort of excitement that came afterwards, especially for Gizmo and Stripe. But they very quickly became basically a zeitgeist sort of like cultural phenomenon of the time. You were getting, everybody wanted Gremlins, food for nightmares. Yep, definitely. Hello, Tico. Hope you're having a good one. But essentially they were not prepared for all the merch that they needed. They weren't expecting people wanted, Gizmo toys, Gizmo plushies. They were shoving that shit into McDonald's Happy Meals so fast. But this was extremely unexpected. This movie made quite a bit of money in the box office. Like I said, third highest grossing of the year, and especially compared to the budget it was allotted. So this was a Steven Spielberg produced movie. Notably, this was one of his 3 movies that helped PG-13 become a thing. The 3 movies that really prompted the rating board to make PG-13 were, number 1 was Temple of Doom, number 2 was Poltergeist, and then number 3 was Gremlins, all Spielberg-related films. So Spielberg's got that under his belt too, not just, I'm a great director, great producer, I invented PG-13 on accident, But this movie, like I said, it was very, very popular at the time. They had actually, the original script and the original writing for this film was a lot darker and a lot gorier. For instance, Joe Dante notably talks about how they, in the original script, had the dog's head cut off by the Gremlins and they bounce it down the stairs. During that sequence where the Gremlins first hatch. But because of budget constraints, they couldn't do that. Which kind of, part of me is like, thank goodness. and then part of me wants to see that more, like, that darker, grimmer, gorier version of Gremlins. However, I love this version of Gremlins as it is, and I think it's an excellent horror segue for children, so I can't complain too much about that, and I wouldn't push for that. Gremlins 2 took an entirely different approach to Gremlins 1. Gremlins 2 is much more of a comedy. It's very much making fun of the first Gremlins in a way, which a lot of people did not take well. It did miserably in the box office compared to the first Gremlins, and then also the reviews of it were not great. But I think once you have the mindset of it's more satirical than horror, it's a good watch. It is a good watch. And basically, so this movie came out in 1984. Gremlins 2 came out in 1990, even though they wanted to greenlight a sequel right off the bat. They couldn't because Joe Dante was very disinterested. He just didn't want to do Gremlins. Like, he didn't want to do another one. He was very fed up. Gremlins, how late am I? Not that late, Grilltan. Not that great. Not that late. We haven't gotten into the storyline or anything. We're just talking about the background of the movie so far. So Gremlins 2 did not get made until 1990, which is a very big gap between the two. And like I said, it only happened because Joe Dante didn't want to do a Gremlins 2. However, Warner Brothers was like, we will give you total creative freedom. And Joe Dante talks about how he wanted to have individualized Gremlins for this film, but because of the budget constraints, they couldn't afford to do that. So they used the same puppet model over and over and over again and dressed it up with different makeup, different costume sort of related things instead of giving them a complete different look. However, with Gremlins 2, they were like, we'll give you enough budget to just do whatever Gremlins you want to do. And then that Key and Peele skit notably happened, basically, is what happened. And then we have, Shockwave Gremlin, and we have Gargoyle Gremlin, and then we have the Super Smart Gremlin, and Gremlins 2 is just a lot more satirical because that's the direction Joe Dante wanted to take it. Chris, he goes by Chris Columbus, who was the writer for the original Gremlins, was not involved with Gremlins 2, and did not like the direction Joe Dante took Gremlins 2. Chris Columbus, for those of you who don't know, he directed, I think, Sorcerer's Stone and maybe a couple other Harry Potter movies. And then, of course, he wrote for this. He's writer-director, very much well-known. This was kind of his stepping stone into those things. So he very much wants a Gremlins 3 to happen. He says he's already got a script written. They just need to get everything kind of consolidated and put together and pushed forward. And since I was in high school, they've talked about Gremlins 3. So, maybe it'll happen eventually. It's not set in stone right now. So nothing is set in stone. And they might say no this year, they might say no the next year, the year after, for the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, but then suddenly decide to do it. Like, it's never a no end completely in Hollywood. Once someone else gets the rights, once it moves, things shake up in Hollywood all the time, so you never know what's going to happen. They might say yes, and then next year it gets canceled because, whatever. Right now would be an excellent time for Gremlins, though, just because of the fact of, first of all, Gremlins is Gremlins. You've still got your original audience is alive. Then you've got their kids, like me, who ate this stuff up as kids. You've got a lot of nostalgia for the 80s going right now, so Gremlins 3 would be, it would be ideal to get it out within the next maybe 3 years. Not that that's going to happen, but that's just kind of my take on it. This movie, like I said, was directed by Joe Dante. If you don't know who that is, he directed The Howling, which is a werewolf film. And this was notably after The Howling, because you can see there's a smiley face on the fridge, and I'll talk about what scene you can see it in. But there's the smiley face from the killer from The Howling in this movie, because Joe Dante kind of likes to do callbacks like that. This movie is just, it's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. It's not gory. It's very tense still. Like I said, it's kind of like a segue horror for children. Personally, when I was a kid, I loved it, and I also hated it. Like, I remember my parents had this really large closet, and it was very, like, deep, and I would get really scared at night of the dark, run into my parents' room, hop into bed with them, and I would just stare at that closet, like, if I see one shadow move, I'm gonna lose my shit. Like, I was like, like my kid, I would not take them to see Gremlins. Yeah, and my parents didn't show me Gremlins. It was my grandma that showed me Gremlins. My mom's very against horror. Like, I tried to convince her to go see Five Nights at Freddy with me, and she wouldn't do it. She was like, I don't think I can handle it. She is not horror centric at all. My dad likes horror, but it's kind of like, it's not like an obsession like it is with me. Kind of obsessive about it, but, anyway. My Nana was very much like that. So she's the one who showed me Poltergeist as a kid. She's the one who showed me Gremlins. She's the one who let me watch Alligator and Ben and Willard and all those things. So she's kind of the reason why I am the way I am. All that stuff said, though, I'm going to get into the meat of the movie. We start off in Chinatown, and we get Rand Peltzer kind of talking about, oh, this is my story, blah, 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 which I think is kind of unfair because he's not there for the big bulk of the worst of the Gremlins stuff, the Gremlin shenanigans he's out of town. But anyway, he's trying to sell the Bathroom Buddy. And the Bathroom Buddy is this brick, essentially, of different gizmos and gadgets you would need in a bathroom. It's got, like, a shaving mirror, it's got a razor, it's got a toothbrush, toothpick. And I love Bathroom Buddy. Whenever someone says Bathroom Buddy, I always think about this specifically. Usually I hear that in relation to, like, a pet. Mine follow me everywhere, so they're my bathroom buddies, but then I think about Bathroom Buddy, and no one else knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So he's trying to sell the Bathroom Buddy. This kid somehow convinces him to go to his uncle's shop down in Chinatown, so that's where Rand is, and he's trying to sell the Bathroom Buddy to this old Chinese man who's he doesn't look interested at all in it. But as he's doing that, he can hear some weird sounds and some singing, so he's like, what is that? And he goes to investigate. In the movie, I must admit, till the Gremlins get wet. Yeah. And it's so strange, too, because, so, I'll get to that in a second, hang on. So, Rand's like, I gotta buy this thing in a box. We don't get to see it yet. And the grandpa's like, it's not for sale. The kid's like, nah, it's for sale. Just go wait outside. So basically this kid takes his uncle's living creature pet and sells it to this random stranger that he found on the street. And speaking of Gremlins, we got one right here. That's right. Let's go. Gremlins in the chat. Gremlins it up, guys. But I was like, it like, as an adult, now that I'm thinking about it, like, I would be pissed if I was the grandpa. Like, that's my pet. That's why I don't take showers. Tico says. Oh, he said, not about that bubbling, bursting, mini Ticos everywhere. We just don't need that. One is good enough. But as the kid's giving him the Mugwai, is what it's called. He tells him it has 3 rules. You know, you can't feed him after midnight. No bright lights. Don't get it wet. And I've looked this up for other reasons, but Mugwai is actually a type of demon in Chinese mythos. And the reason for the rule about them not getting wet is in the mythos, Mugwai mate in the rain. So I don't understand what the bright light thing is, or like where that came from, or the don't feed them after midnight, but that's at least we know where they got the idea of don't get them wet from. So we get the title card at that point. We get this cute little picturesque snowy town called Kensington Falls, and we get Rockin' Ricky Rialto on the radio, who just, I don't know, like, in my brain he's like a staple. Rockin' Ricky, if you don't know Rockin' Ricky, I don't know. Just is a great reference for whatever reason. And you do see, like, there's a billboard of him. Isn't it MOE? However you spell the second part. Gremlins is also part of ancient European culture. That's interesting to know. Mogwai. Yeah, JR's got the right spelling. Mogwai. But, and I also know that because I named one of my cats Mogwai. But, Rock and Ricky, you see a billboard of him, and it's an Indiana Jones reference, which I think is hilarious because, like I said, this is a Spielberg movie. The reason Spielberg didn't take it on himself is I think he was already tied up with something else at the time. Like I said, Temple of Doom came out same year, so I think that's what happened. He was directing Temple of Doom, busy with that. He still wanted to get this done, so he pushed it to Joe Dante to direct. But he did have a lot of say in the movie. And we'll get to that in a second. So as we're getting introduced to this town, we're seeing different townsfolk. One of them is the sheriff. He's showing up to the Christmas tree farm. I mean, pronunciation is a long O, not a short U. Mogwai. Mogwai, yeah. Mogwai. No, long O. Mugwai? Like Mugwai? I don't know. I know in the movie they pronounce it Mugwai. Perhaps there's a different pronunciation in real life. I mean, it's not like... This is also 1984, so it's not like they just can Google it and get the pronunciation off Google. I know there was a movie, what was it? It's called The Last Winter, that uses the Wendigo as, like, its bad guy, but all the mythos for it, it's completely wrong. And I was like, y'all don't have an excuse, because at this time, it's like 2003, you got access to some kind of information. Like, don't play games with me. But, yeah, 1984, they can't really Google it, so they go with Mogwai. So we see at the tree farm, there's this cheap-ass sheriff who's, like, trying to basically beg for a tree off of the guy who owns the tree farm. And not even, like, beg for it as in, like, please... the guys would like one. He's like, oh, they'll probably go bad anyway. Like, he's just being an ass about it. And then, of course, we get to Billy, who is our main character. His bug won't run, his Volkswagen. So he's just got to get out and walk to work. The word Mogwai is the transliteration of the Cantonese word blank, meaning monster, evil spirit, devil, or demon in Chinese culture. Yes. That's the Chinese. I don't know what Mogwai are in the European mythos. That is not English is difficult. Thank you, Tico. Thank you. Yeah, unless it's a European word, and then I got it, like, right off the bat. Like, I'll nail that. You want to give me some, like, weird guttural thing to pronounce, like Welsh? I got you, but, yeah, Chinese, any of that stuff, like, it's too pretty for me to be able to pronounce it easily. So we've got Billy, who's, like I said, his bug won't run, so he's got to get to work. He gets out, he walks in the snow. Mr. Futterman shows up, and he's a reoccurring character in both Gremlins and in Gremlins 2, which is notable because of what happens to him later in this film. He does survive. And he's played by good old Dick Miller. Nice Christmas sweater. Thank you, you wrong. It's Godzilla. So Dick Miller is in this film, and for those who don't know Dick Miller, he's kind of like a notorious sort of B-movie horror actor. He's great. He's very great. But he's talking to Billy about these foreign machines. You can't trust them. They get gremlins up in there. And it's so funny because Billy doesn't mean to. But he kind of just brushes him off and takes his dog with him to work. And Barney is literally, like, such a good boy. He just follows Billy so happily. Like, they pass so many people, and the dog doesn't give a shit about any of those people. He's just walking with Billy. And I was like, this dog is so well trained. Especially, like in the movie, yes. But I think mostly as an actor dog, he's well trained. And this dog's name is Mushroom in real life. So R.I.P. Mushroom, you were a great actor. Like when they throw a walk at a wall, emphasizing certain sounds. It is, but it's also like, there's a certain way you have to do it with, Chinese is kind of complicated. It's the second most complicated aside from English. But Billy works at a bank, which I think is weird to take your dog to work if you work at a bank. But he like hides he hides Barney under the counter and ties him up under the counter, so it should be all fine. And as he's sitting down, this girl comes up to him and is like, "Hey, can you sign this petition?" He's like, "What's it for?" And she's like, "We're trying to get Dory's Tavern established as a landmark so that Mrs. Deagle can't take the lease from him. She's saying that it's an eyesore, and, you know, she just wants to basically put this guy out of business." And we see the devil, or we hear of the devil before we get to see her, and that's, of course, Mrs. Deagle. What bring your kid to work day when some of you people that own animals as your kids? That's true. But I would never take my dogs to work. They'd be fucking ridiculous. Barney is such a good boy until Miss Deagle shows up. But Miss Deagle, we see right away that she's a bitch. She's carrying around the snowman's head, and as she's walking into the bank, she gets stopped by a mom and her 2 kids. And it's very obvious that the mom is, like, trying to get, like, an extension on some kind of lease. And Miss Deagle basically is like, "Well, you know, to ask for Santa for Christmas." And you're like, wow, what a fucking asshole. So she goes into the bank, and she cuts everyone in line, puts the snowman's head on the counter in front of Billy, and is like, "This is what your dog did to my snowman." And he was like, "Well, just tell me how much, you know, I owe you, and I'll pay it." And she was like, "I don't want your money, I want your dog." And he was like, "Why? What are you going to do to my dog?" And she's like, "I'll take him to the pound, and I'll have him put down." And then she's like, "Or I can catch him myself, and I'll put him in my dryer on spin cycle." And I was like, as an adult, I'm like, oh my god. If someone came to my place of work and threatened to kill my dog, I would not be able to control myself. They would get threats back, and they'd be 15 times worse. I would not be as calm about it as Billy is. Barney takes it the way I would take it. He unties himself and jumps over the counter and tries to kill Mrs. Deagle. What a good boy. And of course, that causes a mess for Billy. You'll hear Twitch TV going campsite now, deeming it artistic. I did not hear that, but that's fucking weird. What is happening? Gerald, who is, I guess, the vice president of the bank now, he's kind of Billy's age, and he's a dick. He says he's 22. Bro looks 40 years old. They're at the bar that night at Dory's Tavern, and Kate, who's also their coworker at the bank, is there. She's like, "Hi, Mahia." She's basically like, I volunteer here so he doesn't have to pay someone, but I just kind of wait the tables, and, you know, she just makes tips and that's it. And I was like, and I think that's so nice, like, it's just so sweet. But Gerald's obviously trying to hit on her, and she's obviously not interested, which, same. Gerald's clearly an asshole, clearly full of himself, and also, he says he's 22 and looks 40. Just, there's nothing going for him, really. We transition to home, and Billy's talking to his mom, and it's so sad because, like, there's something wrong, but he can't tell what it is, and she's like, "Oh, Miss Deagle called again today," and you don't know if it's about, like, money issues or if it's about the dog, but the dad comes home, and she's like, "Let's not say anything because Dad's home." And it's so funny because she's watching It's a Wonderful Life on the television, and the only reason that It's a Wonderful Life, this is just a random movie fact, the only reason It's a Wonderful Life really became popular is because it was public domain. So when television started being a thing, they were able to get their hands on a copy of It's a Wonderful Life, and they would play that on the TV because it didn't cost them anything. So it kind of became a classic for people just because they would play it every Christmas because they didn't have to pay for it. So, fun fact, and that's why they're able to use it in this movie, because it's been public domain for so long. I think only recently, like within the last 20 years or something like that, it stopped being public domain. Someone was able to grab the rights to it. But that's why It's a Wonderful Life actually became popular. Another thing that I need to point out is there are swords on the wall of this house, and every time someone closes the front door, one of the swords falls. And that's kind of foreshadowing for later. Those are very important swords. Personally, I'd like to have swords in my house on the wall. I don't think I can convince my family to let me do that, though. So Dad comes home, and he's like, hey, I got a present for you. He hands it to his kid. His kid shakes it, and he's like, no, don't do that. And he's like, what is it? And he's like, it can't wait till Christmas. We got to open it now. And the dog starts barking, so the thing in the box starts barking back, which I think is really cute. And I just have to point out, Barney is such a, like, confident dog. If I brought something home in a box and it started barking at them, they would probably shit themselves and run away. I got 2 to 4 hours at any given time. Sleep is racist. Interesting trivia, yeah. I've got some more as we go through because I know way too much about this movie. Howie Mandel's the voice of the Gremlins and Mugwai. It's actually Frank Welker, who he does a lot of work as Scooby-Doo and Fred. So, again, weird stuff that I know about this movie because I just know too much about this movie. So then the dad's like, we got to turn off the lights. They open the box. It's Gizmo. And I love the old box that he comes in. It's like this weird old mystic looking box. Just very weird. Fun fact about Gizmo is that he actually was not supposed to make it through the whole movie as his cute little self. I can't remember if he was supposed to become a gremlin as well, or if the Gremlins killed him in the original script. However, at the time, it was kind of popular to have, like, the hero and the hero's buddy, and so Spielberg actually suggested that they keep Gizmo alive and let Gizmo kind of buddy up with Billy, which made everyone's job 50 times harder because they originally had one puppet for Gizmo. But because of Gizmo sticking around, they had to make more puppets with more facial expressions. They had to get animatronic Gizmos, and they were always a pain in the ass to get working, actually. Room full of medieval weapons on the walls. That would be dope. And Lego Dimensions as well. Huh. Earl the Mugwai, then later Gremlin. Okay. So Gizmo was actually a pain in the ass for the production crew. He ended up, it was a really good call, obviously, on Spielberg's part, because Gizmo was a big reason why the movie blew up to be so big. And since Gizmo was in a lot more scenes, doing a lot more things, people became really attached to him, and that was part of the popularity of Gremlins. So good call on Spielberg's part. And I have to say, Gizmo has great pitch. He does a lot of singing, and his voice goes up and down. And Billy's kind of like playing with that. He's got like a little keyboard and he's hitting little buttons on it. And then he puts a little Santa hat on Gizmo and he goes to show him in the mirror and accidentally Gizmo Caca. We're getting to Gizmo Caca. So then he shows him in the mirror and a light hits him and he's like, bright light, and falls backwards. And so you kind of get that they don't like bright light. The next morning, Billy goes to use the orange juicer and the shit explodes fucking everywhere. And I love how they try to be supportive of Rand's inventions, but they're all like low-key terrified of them. And as the juicer is exploding, we get a tree delivery via a tree who is actually not a tree. It's a kid in a costume. And the kid in the costume is Corey Feldman. And Corey Feldman is probably the most famous person aside from Dick in this movie, because Corey Feldman, of course, goes on to do Lost Boys. He's in Friday the 13th. He's also, he's Corey Feldman. So he was a big staple in the 80s. He's not anymore, but back then he was very big. You get the Truffle Shuffle, fucking Goonies, he was in basically a lot of those things at the time. So he's probably the most famous person from this movie. But he shows up as a tree. Billy is kind enough to be like, hey, you want to leave that tree costume here? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, what are you going to tell your dad? And he's like, I'll just tell him some bikers took it. And I was like, I don't approve of lying, but honestly, yeah. He's having his, like, 13-year-old son deliver trees dressed as a tree. That's fucking shit, man. Like, not only is his son free cheap labor, he's like, also you have to wear this Christmas tree costume, which is, it looks super uncomfortable, and it looks super, like, detrimental to movement. Corey so went downhill to being a B-movie actor. Yeah, he did. He fell out of popularity, him and Corey Haim both. Back when, I think, they kind of, like, it blew up that they were both into drugs, and so they both kind of stopped being such good actors and then fell out of popularity consequently. But we see that Gizmo's on the bed watching Clark Gable and is clearly impressed with him, and, like, same Gizmo, same. But he's sitting there watching this racing movie that Clark Gable's in, which comes back later. Haim died, it's why Feldman went to shit. I think they both went to shit before that, to be fair. They were not in a lot of things before Corey Haim died. And it was crazy because you had Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, and everybody knew them as the Coreys. And they would be in a lot of things together just because they were friends in real life, too. And they were super popular. So it kind of just all worked out for them until they both got really into drugs. Corey Haim, notably more so. I believe he died either from complications due to his drug use or because of his drug use directly. Meaning that he OD'd, I think. That's what I think happened. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to look it up. But I know he died at an early age because of bad choices. But anyway, we've got Gizmo hanging out on the bed. Corey Feldman is like, oh, he's so cool, can I hold him? And they move him from the bed to the desk. Then he wants to hold him. Then he accidentally knocks over this thing of paint brushes stuck in water, and the water spills all over him. And that's when we get the effects of water on the Gremlins. The skin bubbles and boils, and it's very, very gross, which I love. I've honestly always been very impressed with just, like, the monster lore in general, and then also with the effects, because, like, a lot of the effects in this movie are really fun and really gross, and they're all practical, really. They don't use CGI. I mean, it's 1984. I don't even think, like, if CGI exists at that time, it's very rudimentary, very baby. But Chris Columbus has said if he does a Gremlins 3, he's going to keep it to puppets, possibly stop motion, but he's going to use CGI not at all. And if he does, it'll be just a smidge, because he really doesn't want to. That Haim died of diffuse alveolar damage, pneumonia. Yeah. The death was ruled a natural death. That's weird. Also, I don't trust anything that comes out of LA County, though. The coroner's office there is... Anyway. So, because of all of this, Gizmo's skin starts boiling, little tiny gremlins pop out of his back, and they're like little fuzzballs that slowly form into gremlins, and like I said, it's very gross. Like, everything looks like it's covered in some kind of saliva or like a mucus type thing, which I love. And at this point, Gizmo, like, all the other gremlins are there, and they're like, oh cool, there's more of them. And Gizmo just looks so desolate. Like, the expression on his face, he looks like a 40-year-old mom. Like a 40-year-old single mom who comes home from a rough day at work to find that her kids have destroyed her house and drank all of her schnapps. Like, he's just like, you're like, okay, Gizmo. So, like, right off the bat, Gizmo knows this is not good. And I think that's, like, super important, because I think in one of the early drafts of the script, Gizmo was like, he was supposed to be a gremlin, but clearly he's got like a different MO than all the other gremlins. We see Stripes like starts playing this little tiny, they've got like a little tiny arcade thing, and it's literally like this big, and it's Donkey Kong, and Stripe is playing Donkey Kong, so you're kind of like, nature or nurture? Like, is he just naturally evil, or is it nurtured in him by whatever he's taking in his environment? Maybe he thinks DK is, like, so cool. Which I think a funny thing that I just learned from Girltan the other day is that Donkey Kong was originally supposed to be Mario's pet. So I think that kind of fits really well in here thematically as well. Maybe on accident, maybe on purpose. Grotesque. That's a good word for it. Very grotesque stuff going on in this movie. Stripe spits at Gizmo. Also grotesque. It's like this nasty brown liquid. Very gross spit. You gotta be like, what are you eating? But Barney and Gizmo are on the floor together, and Stripe shoots this spit, and it's so funny because you're like... I just love that Barney and Gizmo are friends. They're like homies. And this is kind of when we see, oh, Barney's not homies with the new Gremlins. That night, we have Billy waking up. I love these breakdowns. What's up, cat dog? Dude, yeah, such a good one. Oh, fuck, what's up? Cat dog. How you doing, guys? Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all. I'm glad you like the breakdowns, cat dog. I appreciate that. So... that night, we have Billy waking up because he's hearing whimpering, goes outside, sees Barney strung up by Christmas lights. I would be freaking out. Like, I'd be livid. I'd be like, who did this to my dog? I'd be, like, murdering people. I'd be knocking on neighbors' doors. Like, I'd be going psycho. Poor Barney, like, and they assume it was Mrs. Deagle, but they don't have any proof. The mom points out there's no snow, there's no footprints in the snow at all. And Rand is like, I locked the house, so I don't really know what happened. But the dad decides that poor Barney needs a little vacation. You know, Rand's like, I'm going to this convention. I'll drop Barney off at your grandma's on the way, and then I'll pick him up on the way home, and he'll be home for Christmas. And he'll be safe is the important thing. So, at that point, Billy decides to take one of the little gremlins to the local middle school teacher. Why the local middle school teacher? I don't know. I'm very confused by that. I know this is a small town, but how do you not have how do you not have someone more sciencey to go to than the middle school science teacher? Hi Sailing. Streaming a little early, just getting the Gremlins. Gremlins 1 done. Need an ugly Christmas sweater with Cthulhu on it? Yeah, we're talking about the original. Gremlins 2. I talked a little bit about it earlier, oh fuck, but I'm okay with Gremlins 2. I think it's fun. You just kind of have to realize it's nothing like the original. It's completely satirical. Joe Dante took it in a completely different direction. And, like, I'm okay with that to a certain extent. Hopefully we get Gremlins 3. Chris Columbus, the original writer for the first Gremlins, he didn't like the way Gremlins 2 came out because he didn't have the creative rights to it. Joe Dante did, and Joe Dante did what Joe Dante wanted, which I think is fun and it's fine, but Chris Columbus is like, no, this isn't what I would have done with Gremlins 2, so he wants to do a Gremlins 3, which will be, supposedly it'll be a direct sequel to the first Gremlins, but who knows? We'll see when it happens, if it happens. So Billy takes one of the Gremlins to Mr. Hansen and shows that he takes Gizmo, drops a little droplet of water, pops out a new Gremlin, lets Mr. Hansen keep the new Gremlin, which is, poor guy, that's going to be his downfall. And I want to say the new guy seems really chill, though. Like, him and Gizmo are, like, talking to each other through the box that Gizmo's in. They're, like, knocking on it, like, talking back and forth. And they seem a lot nicer than, like, Gizmo and Stripe. So, like, I don't know if they're all, like, made and then just automatically hate Gizmo, or if it, like, I don't know. But that night, Billy's walking home, and drunk Mr. Futterman is at Dory's Tavern. Katie's trying to get him to leave, and he's like, how about one more beer, and I'll help you clean up the place. And she's like, no, Mr. Futterman, like, that's really nice, but we gotta get going. And drunk Mr. Futterman is me. Like, when I'm that drunk, I'm like, nah, just one more beer. And it's like, no, Hannah, go sit down. Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell in it again. Hell yeah, that'd be good. But she gets Mr. Futterman out of the bar. They're about to get into the tractor that he owns. And he starts talking about Gremlins, you know. Oh, you know, Gremlins. They put them all up in every technology. They'll put them in your car. They put them in your watch. Little Gremlins. They just destroy everything. You know, that's what took down our planes in World War II. And as he's going on, Kate's like, maybe you should walk home, Mr. Futterman. And he's like, you know what, Katie, it's a really nice night. I think maybe I should walk home. And she's like, I think that's best. Dope Gremlin action figure. Dude. I do have a little stripe. Like, it's like a paperweight that's like it's made into stripe. Rolling in the hay in the tractor. Rolling in the hay is in Monarch with his son. Oh, that's cool. Kurt Russell. That guy's the man. So Billy decides to walk Katie home. They don't walk Mr. Futterman's on his own. That drunk guy can walk his own ass home. But Billy's trying to get with Katie, so of course he's going to walk her home. And we get this, like, spiel from her about, like, Christmas seems like a touchy subject for her. And despite that kind of snafu, Billy still manages to, like, get a date with Kate. Like, she's like, yeah, I'm free Thursday. And he's like, you want to go on a date? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, sweet, I'll call you, blah, blah, blah. He goes home. We see that the teacher is still at the school doing experiments on the gremlin. And like I said, like, he's a middle school teacher, so, like, what kind of experiments is this guy running? Like, I'm so confused. Like, what is he doing? Like, what kind of equipment does this school have? Like, it's so confusing to me. But he lies to the gremlin to steal some of his blood for some kind of test. And that's notable because he's like, oh, it's not gonna hurt. And then the gremlin is like, because the needle is, like, basically twice the size of this poor little thing's arm. What's Monarch? Let's see. Watch Young Frankenstein. Be good. Monarch is, yes, a series. It is. It's about Godzilla, which relates to my Christmas sweater. My ugly Christmas sweater. It's the best. It's actually the only Christmas sweater I have. So we get the teacher stealing blood from the gremlin. We get Invasion of the Body Snatchers on the TV back at Billy's house, which is good foreshadowing. And it's so funny how, like, very separated they are. Like, there's, you know, Gizmo hanging out with Barney and hanging out with Billy, and then there's all the other gremlins. Like, fuck those guys. We don't talk to those guys. They can live on the floor. And they start going off, and they're, like, freaking out because they're hungry. And so Billy checks the clock, and it's not midnight yet, so he goes downstairs and comes back with, like, a plate of chicken wings. And these are the nastiest looking chicken wings when the gremlins are eating them. Like, I've never seen chicken wings that make me want to vomit like these chicken wings do. They are disgusting looking. And the way they're devouring them, like I said, just like a lot of saliva, mucusy nastiness going on in this movie, and it's great. It just makes it so unappetizing. And Billy offers some to Gizmo, and Gizmo's like, no. So, at the same time, we've got the teacher at the middle school. He's, like, you know, eating a sandwich, and he's like, okay, good buddy, it's midnight, like, you know, see you later. He leaves the sandwich on the counter. Gremlin's like, yum, yum, just reaches out of the cage and grabs that and pulls it to him. So we've got both of these gremlins eating at night. And this is also one of those scenes where you can see the smiley on the fridge. That's a callback to The Howling. And I love this because, like, this rule about eating after midnight, someone was like, so when does that stop exactly? And I was like, I mean, I would assume sunrise, but, like, I don't really know. There's no, it's just don't feed them after midnight, but, like, that could, like, it's still after midnight, like, right now. So, I don't understand, where's the cutoff with that rule? Like, again, I assume it's sunrise, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's like 6 a.m. No idea. So they ate. We get Gizmo saying, uh-oh, and then we get these pods. And like I said, I love that we get an Invasion of the Body Snatchers thing going on, and then we get these pods sitting around the room. How are you doing with the teacher? Gremlins 2 should have been like Gremlins 1. Same cast, same director, same scenes. All times after midnight. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, every time is after midnight at some point. Like, I'm so confused. Oh, Since Gremlins and Mogwai from this franchise are from China, wouldn't be on there. That's the other thing. That's another thing that I was talking about, is like, what about other time zones? Like, what time zone is it? Like, is it just any time zone? Is it the time zone you're in? Like, so if it's midnight here, and then I have my gremlin here, and then I take it to California via, like, jet, and it's not midnight anymore, can I feed him then? Is that okay? Like, I'm very confused. I need exact specifications, please. Mr. Grandpa from Chinatown, give me the exact deets. But they have these pods now in the bedroom, and they're these really, like, alien, and I mean, like, Alien the movie looking pods, which are super cool. Mom asks Billy, like, did you get him wet? And he's like, I mean, this isn't really, like, midnight ends at noon. That's literally, like, when does it end? She's like, did you expose him to bright light? Did you feed him after midnight? And he's like, well, I fed them some chicken wings, but I made sure. And then he looks over and he's like, now wait a second. And he walks over there and he sees that the cord has been cut. And he's like, what's going on? So that is a lot of fun. Gremlins fucking knew. They knew. The coon looks like alien eggs. Yeah, that's exactly, like, it looks like the alien's eggs. Cycle of the sun. Sunrise has to be cut off. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, where's the damn facehuggers? That's literally kind of what you expect. I do think this movie, I don't know, when did Alien come out? Hang on. Now I gotta look that up. Sorry, distraction, but I want to see when that movie came out. 1979. Okay, so definitely Gremlins was very inspired, clearly, from the facehugger pods, the facehugger eggs, because that's what they look like. And at school, we get the same thing. The poor little gremlin's cage has to be, like, cut open because the pod is too big for the cage. And the teacher, Mr. Hansen, is explaining this is the pupil stage, whatever. And Corey Feldman's he's in there going through a lot of changes, and Corey Feldman's like my mother. And he's like, no, it's a little different. And while they're talking about this thing, Mama's at home, Mama Peltzer. She's at home making literally the nastiest looking gingerbread cookies I've ever seen in my life. Like, the cookies themselves are really nicely cut, but then she chooses, like, this nasty yellow frosting to put on them, and they just look disgusting. I would not touch those things with a friggin' 10-foot pole, man. Like, would not eat one of those. She's sitting there, though. She's doing her stuff. And the phone rings, and I guess Rand Peltzer developed this wireless phone. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, if that motherfucker had got that thing working, dude would be rich. But it doesn't work very well. And so they're just talking about, you know, just stuff going on, blah, blah, blah. How you doing, honey? You know, he's at the convention, and the shit going on in the background of this convention is fucking wild. I love it. Like, if you've not seen this movie, or you've never paid attention to what's going on in the background of this convention, highly encourage it. Very entertaining. Are Mogwais mammals? Do they change classifications? Mogwais are actually, yeah, JR's right. Technically, they're evil spirits. It's midday instead of midnight. That would make sense. But I don't, like I said, I don't know. I need Mr. Chinese grandfather, please give me the details. So Mom's at home talking about just random stuff. She doesn't mention what happened with the Mogwai. And I love that because, again, Rand starts this off saying that it's his story, but really it's not. Like, he's not around for any of this shit. Then we cut to the bank, and Mrs. Deagle is just a complete ass. She cuts everyone in line at the bank so she can deposit a check. And it is like, I'm like, how could you just be the worst? Like, everything you do is just the worst. This lady is just the worst, and I love it. Because then what happens to her, you feel 0% bad. At school, so Billy's at work now, he's dealing with that. At school, we've got the teacher with the big pod, basically, in a box. And they're watching this heart video, and that's very noticeable because as you hear the heart pumping in the video, like, something's going on with the Mogwai, and it starts beating in there. And then the box falls over and the teacher notices and he's like, all right, everybody, let's go. Have a Merry Christmas. You want to know what I want? Super Bowl tickets would be nice. Just like unrealistic shit, which is so funny. And I have to say that Jerry Goldsmith, who is the composer for this movie, fucking nailed it. The score is amazing for this movie. Just like very good, spot on. What is a day? Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There's so many questions. I'm getting off on the tangent again because I'm like, I have so many questions about Midnight. Like, what I need the directions, please. The complete directions straight from the box. I don't want your watered down version. I want those straight from the box directions. So the box falls over and the teacher, it's like still dark in the room. The reel is still going and it's like an old school reel, which is really, really fun because it's got the projector and the light from there. And the teacher pulls out, I think, like a Snickers bar, which is hilarious. And he's like, hey, buddy, like, come out from under the desk, and he's like, you hear the Gremlin going, yum, yum. And it's so funny because I'm like, that's me. It's a whole mood that I can be in. And that's basically when the teacher gets fucked. You're like, oh my gosh, he's offering the Gremlin, he's putting his arm so far underneath that desk. You're like, you're screwed, man. And of course, he's like, he gets gripped. Billy walks in literally right after. We see the teacher on the floor, not moving, with a needle sticking out of his ass. And you're like, I can't even blame that Gremlin. I'd be pissed off about that still, too. And originally, for this scene, they wanted literally like a Pinhead kind of reference where Hannah is Gremlin, where they were going to have the teacher with a ton of needles sticking out of his face. But again, because of budget and they decided to change the tone of the movie, they didn't go with that. So Billy goes to use the phone. The Gremlin reaches up, claws him, and then wanders off. Very notable here, the Gremlin goes to eat an apple and is like, yuck, and throws it, then picks up literal glass and is like, yum, yum, and starts eating that. It confirms that that's yum, yum. So Gremlins would rather eat glass than apples. And honestly, that's also a whole mood. What child isn't like that, So Billy rushes off to the school nurse's office, and this is when we get our first look at a fully transformed Gremlin. And this thing is disgusting. No more fur. It's like this slimy looking scales. So good. Just so nasty looking. Not cuddly. Just the opposite of everything that we've had so far. And I love that. So Billy freaks out. He realizes, oh my gosh, there's so many pods at home. So he goes to call his mom. And he's like, Mom, you need to get out of the house. And she's like, what? And he's like, get out of the house. And then the phone line gets cut. Which is kind of funny these days, because, like, there's no way to do that. Like, you would have to somehow block signal. Because back then, you had the wire that hooked into the wall, and that wire, there's wires outside, just crazy stuff back in the day that we had to deal with. But the Gremlin cut the wire, and then immediately you get, do you hear what I hear? And you're like, as a kid, that song freaked me the fuck out. I could not handle that song. And neither could my older brother. So, like, as much as I couldn't handle it, I would definitely, like, if we were home alone or something, and, like, he was freaking out about something in the dark, I'd be like, do you hear what? And he would just lose his fucking mind. And I want to say shout out to Mama Peltzer, because she kicks so much ass in this scene. She's at home, the phone line gets cut. She goes up to check the pods. Those things are fucked. She comes back. She stops the recording. She comes back downstairs. She's like, there's Gremlins in the kitchen. And one of them is like, dives into the blender to eat all of that nasty, scary-ass Christmas song. It really is. These things, you just knock down the cell tower. Just the whole tower. Just fuck that thing up. Gremlins could do it, though, is the other thing, Girl Tan. Like, you say that jokingly, but... Yeah, so the one Gremlin goes to reach in and, like, eat the frosting. She turns on the blender and blends the fuck out of his face, which is just wild. And they get away with this because they don't show the Gremlin afterwards. Like I said, this movie really pushed PG rating. They felt like it wasn't bad enough to be R, but it still shouldn't have been PG. So that's one of the reasons they created PG-13 was Gremlins. This whole scene, so she blends that gremlin. She's got a knife in her hand. There's another gremlin across the way. She goes over and just stabs the hell out of this gremlin. There's another gremlin. He's sitting in front of an open microwave. She grabs like Pam spray and just sprays him until he backs up into the microwave. She shuts the door and turns that sucker on, and that guy fucking explodes, and it is so gross. Like, there's this gushing sound effect. It's just like exploding against the glass window of the microwave, so you get to see it. It's horrendous. And honestly, like, he's only in there like maybe 10 seconds until he blows up, which is probably about correct. Probably would only need about 10 seconds to blow up in a microwave. Fun fact. I don't know this from personal experience, but a friend of mine one time microwaved his hamster for 10 seconds, trying to dry it off, supposedly, and it exploded like this, he said. And that kind of makes me want to throw up and die. But, yeah. Definitely would happen. So, she's, like, super fucking ready now. She's blended, chopped, microwave gremlins. Homie grabs 2 knives. Like, literally, she grabs one and then goes to turn, and then she's like, hang on 1 second, and grabs another knife. And I was like, this woman is a beast. She goes out into the living room, because she's still got 2 more. There's 5 pods. She's like, we got 2 more of these fuckers to kill. So she goes out to the living room with these 2 knives. I'm gonna push this frame. It's better be says Logan's Run, originally G-rated movie. PG. No, I'm talking about PG and PG-13. 2 different. Like, PG-13 in 1984 did not exist, but because of Temple of Doom, because of Gremlins, and because of Poltergeist, all 3 of those are related, or Spielberg-related movies, all 3 of those kind of pushed them into making PG-13. Eat the hamster! What kind of friends Hannah has? Yeah, these are also the guys who found an alligator in their pool and trapped it with pool equipment, duct taped its mouth shut, and then swam with it for several hours before they took it out back, unduct taped its mouth, and set it free. So, anyway, so the mom, she's got the 2 knives, she's going out there. We get this cool fake out with a Christmas stocking. There's, like, something moving. She stabs it open like a beast. She's not even gonna, like, sit there and, like, no. She just stabs it open, and it's just this little toy. And as she's backing up, we get this really cool shot of the lights in the Christmas tree, and then you see the 2 glowing gremlin lights. And then the tree falls forward on her, and she's trying to fight this gremlin through the tree. And it clearly doesn't work out well, because Billy comes through the front door, and his mom is like, the gremlin is riding her like a rodeo horse, and he's choking her with some kind of wire he found. And so Billy grabs the sword. Brilliant placement of the sword, brilliant use of it, grabs the sword, cuts the gremlin's head off, and it flies into the fireplace, and you get this really cool shot of the gremlin's head in the fire, burning up. It's amazing. But of course, we still have 1 more gremlin left. We turn, we see Stripes by the window. He uses the drapes and blows his nose like he's sad his friends died, and then he busts through the window and goes running off. So at this point, like, Billy's like, oh my gosh, I gotta go after him. He grabs his mom, takes him to the doctor's house next door, and then runs after Stripe. And Stripe, that motherfucker, he goes right to the YMCA. And this is why TV's bad for youngins and evil gremlins, because he wouldn't have known about the YMCA if he hadn't been watching TV. Fucking Billy. So he goes to the YMCA, gloves that shit up, jumps right into the pool, and we get this really cool, like, I love all the effects in this movie, but the pool starts bubbling and it starts glowing. Billy runs out of there because that's just the smart thing to do at this point. He's like, I'm so under-equipped for this. He runs out of there, and as he's running out, you get these really cool, like, red and green menacing lights coming out of the YMCA. And then, after this, you get this slow stop animation shot of the gremlins running through the snow into the town. And there's just a fuck ton of them. And you're like, oh, this is so bad. Billy goes to the sheriff because, like I said, he realizes he's under-equipped for this. Who's probably more equipped? Probably the sheriff. Just kidding. The sheriff is an asshole. We already know this. He's also drunk as a skunk, and so is the deputy. And as Billy's trying to explain to him this very dire situation, he's like, "Are you drunk, kid?" Like, bro, do you know how much alcohol it takes to start to hallucinate? A lot. And you are way closer to that than Billy is. So they don't believe him, and he's like, "Well, what do these things look like?" And he's like, "Well, at first they look like this." And he's like, "Can we dim the lights?" So he's obviously going to show them Gizmo. We cut to the Futterman's house, and I have to say, Mrs. Futterman is like this cute little old lady. Like, so cute, so adorable. I love Mrs. Futterman. I know nothing about her. I want her to be my grandma, though. And Mr. Futterman, complete opposite vibes in this house right now. He's on the TV he's channel surfing. She's like, "Isn't it just so lovely, Murray?" And he's like, "Ugh." And he's trying to watch TV. Shit's not it's not happening. So he's like, "I'm gonna go check the antenna." And he goes outside, tries to check the antenna, hears something, goes over to his shed, and the snowplow comes out with the doors of the shed closed. So he runs back into his house because it's coming after him. And he closes the doors, and he gets his wife, and they move to the back of the room. And then we get this awesome shot of the snowplow coming through the front of their house toward them. And as it's coming, he's like, "There's a gremlin in my cab." And he just starts screaming, "There's a gremlin in my cab!" And then they just fucking plow those people over. And I was so sad as a kid because I thought they died. And like I said, Mrs. Futterman's adorable, and I like Mr. Futterman. But fun fact, they do survive. Gremlins 2. They're there. They're alive. Neither of them are even handicapped. They're good to go, man. They help out in that movie, which is great. Then we get this fun mailbox scene where the preacher is, he's trying to send this preacher's trying to send mail, and the mailbox keeps spitting the mail out. And he's like, "What the hell?" So then someone else comes up, and he's like, "Oh, trying to mail something?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Be my guest." So he goes to stick his hand in there, and the gremlins grab it. And then we get a fun scene where they're fucking with the street lights, and they turn them all green, so everybody goes at once, and of course they're like, it's so good. And then we flash back to the sheriff's station where Gizmo is trying to convince them that the situation's serious. Billy's trying to convince them that the situation is serious. The sheriff and the deputy are not believing that shit. But then the sheriff gets a call about some freak accident at the Futtermans with a snowplow. And Billy's like, "It's the creatures, I'm telling you." And he's like, "Go home, kid. Open your Christmas presents. I'm an adult. I know what's going on here. Go sit down." And then they get in their car and they go to leave. We cut to what the Gremlins are doing again. And we get Mrs. Deagle, the front of Mrs. Deagle's house, and it's like Deagle Estate, and it has her hours on there. She's open for 1 hour a day, Monday through Friday. And it's the stupidest time. It's like 10:15 to 11:15 is when she's open. I'm like, what a bitch. It's so inconvenient, but it's so funny to me. Just the little details in this movie that are fleshed out that I see as an adult. I'm like, damn, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's kind of a dick move to only be open for 1 hour a day every day, but same Mrs. Deagle. I feel you on that. So Mrs. Deagle's in her house. She's crazy cat lady, has 50,000 different cats in this fucking house. And she's going to feed them, and then she's got one of those electric chairs that go up and down, and she's got a little door for her cats to come in and out. Of course, a gremlin uses that. She doesn't see it. She hears Christmas carolers, and she hates Christmas carolers because, fuck joy. We don't like that. Mrs. Deagle only exists to make money, and singing, that's not money. You can't make money off of singing. Question mark, dubious statement. So she goes to grab a pitcher of water to just dump on these Christmas carolers. And it's just the fucking Gremlins, and they're just they're the best Christmas carolers. She freaks out, of course. She starts screaming. She's like, "What are they?" She locks her door, and then she immediately goes to, fuck, this is that Twilight Zone episode. And I'm that lady, and she's like, they're here for me. And she's like, "I'm not ready yet." So she sits down in her chair, and this is the best part of this movie. She clicks the little button to go up the stairs, and the Gremlins have already fucked with the chair, so she just accelerates and accelerates and accelerates all the way up the stairs, and eventually, this is, completely unrealistic, but she shoots out the top window and dies. And it's the best. She falls, her chair with her in it falls right in front of the sheriff and the deputy as they're driving by. And then they turn and they see this man just covered in gremlins who's pretending to be Santa, and he's just like struggling with these gremlins, and they do absolutely nothing to help him. They're just like staring, and they're like, that is so fucked up. Like, what is going on? But they don't help him, and it's so funny because one of the gremlins is at eye level with them. He's like right at the window, and they literally just roll up the window, and the gremlin's like, and they're just rolling up the window, and they're like, I'd like to go home now. And so, yes, William Shatner on a plane, you're freaking out, gremlin on the wing. That's how I felt when Get All Tied in the first movie. So, they're like, they go forward, they've not realized that the gremlins fucked with their brakes. Something happens on the road, they're trying to like stop, of course they have no brakes, they flip, thank God, they did not deserve to live, and it's just chaos. It's just absolute chaos. We see Corey Feldman is also, like, we get a shot of him holding down the fort at home. He's like hitting gremlins with a slingshot, and then there's a gremlin hanging off of the Christmas lights on the window above him, and he just grabs some scissors and goes to cut that thing, and you can hear the gremlin go, don't cut. He just cuts him off, and he's like, and swings away. Just like utter chaos all throughout the town. Then we get the Dory's Tavern scene with the gremlins, and I love this scene. It took the longest for them to film. It was a full week of filming, and it's because they have so many moving gremlins in this scene. And so you needed a ton of puppeteers for this scene. And Joe Dante said, by the time we were done, everything just smelled like beer and popcorn. All these gremlin puppets smelled like beer and popcorn. It was insane. And the actress who plays Kate, she was fed up. She was ready to go home because they only needed her really for most of this filming section. And they weren't sure how much they would need her, so she was just there on hand. But they did this toward the end of production because they knew they were like, we're gonna want to just like call it quits on this thing afterwards. So and as the gremlins are like doing everything they're doing, they're like drinking all the beer, they're smoking a lot, there's popcorn everywhere, like Joe Dante said. There's all different kinds of gremlins doing all kinds of things. Like, you've got like a smooth jazz gremlin, you've got poker playing gremlins, and you've got like Stripes sitting there playing, and the gremlin next to him points out that the one gremlin's cheating, so he pulls out a gun and just shoots him in the head. It's so good. And then you have all these different, you've got like a flasher gremlin, which is one of my favorites. Just crazy gremlin nonsense going on. Absolute chaos. And I'm like, poor Kate isn't even a paid worker at this place. Like, she just volunteered to work Christmas because she hates Christmas. She volunteered to work at this place because she likes the place. And this shit is happening. And she's like trying to give all the gremlins what they want. She's like, just don't bite me. And so she goes to light one of their cigarettes and notices they don't like the light on the fire of the match. So Kate puts like 2 and 2 together. She grabs a Polaroid with a light on it and starts taking pictures. Hey, thank you. She starts taking pictures of the gremlins with the flash going so she can get out of there. She gets like towards the very entrance, and there's a burglar gremlin and he's got a gun, and she's run out of like film or something. Camera's not flashing, and the gremlin is like pointing it at her, and she moves and he moves with her, and then she ducks at the last second and he shoots and he hits the painting behind her. And then Billy pulls up right on time. His lights are flashing into Dory's Tavern, so all the gremlins are like, ah! So then he goes in and he gets Kate, and they try to leave via the Volkswagen, but it's suddenly not working anymore. So they have to get out and make a run for it. They make it to the bank, and then we get Kate's screwed up story. I totally understand why she hates Christmas. Like, if I were her, I'd probably hate Christmas as well. She got like a little bit of PTSD going on with this story too. She talks about how, on Christmas, a couple days before Christmas, their dad just didn't show up. They called the office, he wasn't there, they couldn't find him, they called the police couldn't find him, he was missing for like 5 days, and then on Christmas Eve, she went to go light the fire in the fireplace, and she could smell something, so they called the fire department, and the fire department broke into the chimney. And she's like, we were expecting them to pull out, dead bird or a dead cat, and they pulled out my dad. He had dressed up as Santa and wanted to come down the chimney to surprise them, and he slipped and he fell and he died. And that's why she hates Christmas. And for me, like, I didn't realize this was a scene for whatever reason until I was, like, maybe, 10. And I'm like, what did I do before then? Because I saw this movie probably at, 4 or 5 years old. And I was like, did I just, mentally skip that part? Did I just block her out, tune her out? I'm like, oh, grown-ups talking, this is annoying. Like, get back to the part where the gremlins are destroying things. Like, I have no idea how this completely, went over my head as a child. But yeah, I don't remember this being a scene until I got to be, 10 years old. And then I was like, I should have known Santa wasn't real all those years, because literally I love this movie and I watch it every year and without my parents, so it's not like they skip this scene. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, just mentally blocked that out as a child. But from here we move on to the movie scene where all the gremlins are in the movie theater. They leave the bank. They're like, where are they? And he's like, they're probably somewhere dark and quiet. And so they're all in the movie theater. Somehow they get the reel going, and it's Snow White. And then we get them all singing along to Snow White. And this is where we get my favorite gremlin, the Milk Duds gremlin. Stripe gets up to go get more stuff, and the gremlin next to him is like, Milk Duds! And my mom is a Milk Duds fiend. We always have Milk Duds in our house because she loves Milk Duds. And, if she's on the couch and she already has, a drink, and I get up to go get something, and she's like, hey, Hannah, can you get me something? 9 times out of 10, it's Milk Duds. And so I always go, Milk Duds, whenever she asks me to go get them. And I'm like, I told her one day, I was like, I'm going to be 80 one day watching this movie with my grandkids. This gremlin is going to go, Milk Duds, and I'm just going to start crying. And my grandkids are going to be like, why are you crying, Grandma? And I'm going to be like, it's my mom. And they're going to be so fucking confused. But anyway, Stripe finds that there are no more goodies in the movie theater. He sees some in the convenience store across the street, so that's where he goes. The gremlins are having a party, watching Snow White, and Billy's like, where's the boiler room? So they go to the boiler room. He releases the gas, kind of sets a big long rag on fire leading into the boiler room, so they have some time to leave. The gremlins, of course, find them. There's this tense chase scene. They manage to lock the gremlins in the theater and run away in time for the theater to fucking explode. And I was like, I can't imagine going to my local theater and making it explode. I can't imagine doing that. That would not be the first thought in my head. Maybe setting it on fire, but they make it fucking explode. And Stripe's at the convenience store. When it blows up, he turns and candy just falls out of his mouth, and he's like, ah. And then we get more Gizmo caca, which is the best. Stripe runs into the convenience store. Billy's like, we gotta stop him before he gets to water, or it's gonna start all over again. So they break into the convenience store too. They gotta split up, gang. Billy gets a bat and he goes to go fight Stripe. Kate and Gizmo, they go to find lights. We get there's a ton of cool little sequences in this one where Stripe's they're playing cat and mouse a little bit. And it's kind of terrifying because Stripe really does kind of have the upper hand. He's got claws, he's got teeth. I mean, Billy has teeth, but they're not like Stripe's. Plus, Stripe is small, and he's very wily. And he's very murdery, and Billy is not very murdery. So Stripe he's got the upper hand. Billy walks through the convenience store, and there's this wall of TVs, and Stripe appears on one of them, and he bashes it in just because it startles him, and then he's on all of them, and he realizes, oh, he must be in front of the camera around the corner, so he runs over there, and Stripe's already gone. Again, you get a lot of chase sequences in here. There's a scene where Stripe is just constantly throwing stuff at Billy, and he throws a saw blade so hard that it sticks 3/4 of the way into the wall. There's the saw blade's this big, and there's this much of it sticking out of the wall, and I was like, damn, son, he's got an arm. That kid can throw. Kate's in the, like, department store, like, I don't know, I guess you would call it main control room. And she's trying to figure out how to turn on the lights. She's getting different things to work. Hey. Thank you. But none of the things that she's getting to work are the lights. So Giz leaves to try and go help Billy, and Kate's still there trying to, like, get stuff done. Gizmo notices that the sun is out, and in the meantime, Billy is fighting for his life against Stripe. Stripe's got, like, a crossbow. He's shooting little darts at him. Then he gets a chainsaw, like a tiny-ass chainsaw, and runs at Billy with the chainsaw. And luckily, Billy has that bat, and he just eats through that thing, like, oh. So, finally, Kate rips into the control panel like a fucking bear and starts just hitting lights. She's like, everything is getting turned on. I don't know what does, so, like, we're just turning on everything. And it turns on all the lights. Stripe pulls, he's like, bright light. The chainsaw takes him away because it's still moving, and he's not, like, heavy enough to stop it from moving. So the teeth are just eating into the floor, dragging him away. He, at the same time, like, Billy gets back up. Giz finds himself a cute little car to drive around, and he's, like, very Clark Gable inspired. He's like, super, super cute. We get, Billy's dad is finally coming back into town, notices everything is fucked. We get Rock and Ricky saying that the Marines are on standby with fire hoses. And I'm like, bitch, no! That's the worst thing to be on standby with. Luckily, there's only one gremlin, and he's being taken care of at the moment. But, like, literally 30 minutes earlier, that would have been horrible. Stripe sees that there's a fountain with water coming out of it, and he goes, glub, glub, motherfucker, and goes over to get it. He also sees a gun, and he's like, ooh, a gun, and grabs the little gun, runs over to the fountain, is about to stick his finger in it, and of course he's got the gun pointed at Billy, so Billy's like, not gonna fuck with that. Giz takes his little car and, like, somehow manages to, like, jump it over Stripe and next to the control for the blinds, pulls on the blinds come down so they're just shining on Stripe. And I have to tell you that fucking scene haunted me as a child. That skeleton, the way his eyes start melting, his face starts melting, everything just starts melting, and he falls into the water, and then the skeleton does a last jump scare and jumps out of the water. And it's literally just Stripe's skeleton, like, gurgling and sputtering until it, like, just melts. It's disgusting. And I love it, but as a kid, that thing freaked me out. It haunted all of my dreams. Like, all of them. Every single one of them. So after everything's died down, we get the news. You know, Billy's at home, Kate's there, Gizmo's there, Mom's there, Dad's there, Barney is there. We get the news talking about a Christmas riot, and I love that. Like, someone just decided to start a Christmas riot. Yeah, man. Like, it just happened. Weird. Sleepy little town. Fuck Christmas. They're standing there, and the Chinese grandpa just walks in. Just walks right into their house. And Rand's like, oh, this is the guy I bought, you know, the Mugwai from. The Chinese guy looks down, sees Gizmo watching TV, and he's like, you teach him to watch TV? Yeah. And I'm like, that's the thing you're mad about? Like, so many people died tonight, and you're like, I can't believe that you let him watch TV. Now I gotta put up with him wanting to watch TV. But then Rand gets the real lecture after that, you know, your culture just doesn't appreciate nature's gifts, blah, 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 blah. And, he's about to leave with Giz, and then Giz knocks on the box, and the Chinese man is like, he wants to say something to you, pointing to Billy, and Billy's like, oh, you can understand him? And he's like, yeah. He's like, to listen, one only has to, to understand, one only has to listen, or whatever. So then Gizmo pops out and gives a bye, Billy. Hi, Geek. And, how you doing, Geek? Hope you're doing well. He pops out, says bye, Billy, goes back in the box, and, the Chinese grandpa is like, maybe you one day will be ready for Mugwai. And then Rand comes up and offers him a smokeless ashtray, which is one of his inventions that doesn't work. And I was like, this guy is like I can't tell if he's nice or if he's just stupid. Like, I love Rand Peltzer. He's a great character, but I'm like, why would you offer this to the Chinese guy? But the Chinese guy's, he's very sweet. He's very grateful. And then as he's walking away with the Mogwai, Gremlins see it through the eyes of Moon. It's a fucking good movie. It's a beautiful movie. As the Chinese man's walking away, we get the outro, which is just a monologue by Rand, and it's a really, really good outro. I just think the actor's voice and then also the way he delivers the lines, they both add up to it being very memorable, very good. And then we get the fun Gremlins theme song that is literally like, I don't know, to me it coexists with Christmas. Same, Sammy, same. Love Gremlins. Great movie. Like I said, a lot of good effects. All of it's practical. They use puppets or they use stop animation. They don't do any CGI. I mean, it's 1984. But like I said, Chris Columbus, he's got a script written for Gremlins 3. He really wants to do it. There's just a bunch of issues with rights at the moment, I guess. So they're sussing that out. And Gizmo as Rambo was hilarious. Yeah, that was in Gremlins too. Loved that. So hopefully Gremlins 3 will be a thing. Hopefully soon, because I've been waiting for it since like 2010 it was announced, I think, the first time. But Chris Columbus said if he's involved, he's written it, he wants to direct it. He's like, there's not going to be any CGI, or if there is, it's going to be very minimal. He's like, I'd rather use the practical puppets and all that good stuff. Gremlins 2, like I said, not really a horror film, more of a comedy. Very satirical. Gizmo shows up as Rambo. And that was more or less a Joe Dante thing. Chris Columbus would have rather it been more horror geared. The original script for Gremlins, the original storyline for Gremlins was more horrific and gory and terrifying and dark. But because of budget constraints, they decided to go a completely different direction. So yeah, Gremlins, 1984, third highest grossing movie that year, which is impressive considering the lineup. Gremlins was actually a small cultural phenomenon. Nobody expected it to be as popular as it was. Part of it was because of Gizmo. Part of it was because the tone of the movie had to change. Fun fact, there was two Gremlins rides. One of them was in Germany. One of them is in Australia. And the one, I think, in Germany has Alf in it. If you know who that is, you'll be very confused. If you don't know who that is, you're going to Google it and then be very confused. And then the other Gremlins ride has Beetlejuice in it, which is also equally weird, but maybe a little less confusing. I don't really know, because Beetlejuice kind of fits that tone more than Alf does. But yeah, the German, so basically I think it was called the Great Movie Ride. Basically, at the one in Germany, you're supposed to be watching clips that are like, they're outtakes, and then the Gremlins take over the studio. Alf and Gizmo help you escape. The Great Movie Ride over in Australia, same storyline, except Beetlejuice and Gizmo try to help you escape, and you can actually find videos of those rides on YouTube, fun fact. So very, very strange, but that's how big Gremlins was. It was big enough that it got its own rides in different parks around the world. There was also a small Gremlin statue. I don't know if it's still there, or not a statue, a puppet. One of the Gremlin puppets from the movie was actually, it was in a glass case at Disney's Hollywood Studios, or MGM, whatever you want to call it. For a little while, it was in one of their gift shops. I don't know if it's still there or not. A lot of things have changed at Hollywood Studios since I last went. The last time I went, the Gremlin was there, but like I said, it was probably a decade and a half ago that I last went to Hollywood Studios. So, yeah. But that's Gremlins. Sammy, I'm sorry you came in at the end, but highly encourage you to go back if you want to know more Gremlins facts, weird Gremlin things. We talk about the origin of the word Mogwai, and just kind of go over different things. So, like I said, this is one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. Haunted me. Had a lot of Gremlin-related nightmares as a child. And I wasn't so much afraid of the dark as I was afraid of gremlins being in the dark. Specifically gremlins. Like, you could be like, there's a bear in that dark cave, and I'd be like, whatever. But if you're like, there's a gremlin in that closet, I'd be like, fuck that, I'm out of here. Just went off to sell folks in the country, the ghoulies. Yeah, basically. So, yeah, that's the Gremlins. Highly recommend it. It's literally one of my favorite Christmas movies. It is not Christmas until I've watched Gremlins. Also, JR, that's the winning comment in the chat of the day. Alf sure loved pussy. And a lot of people who don't know Alf are very confused right now. Like I said, just look it up. Be more confused. Go look it up. Gremlins. Hi, Jada. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you all very much. Kind of a shorter stream because it's more of a podcast episode. I'll be uploading the audio directly onto Spotify, uploading it onto YouTube. Thank you, Cat Talk. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys engaging in the chat, even though I can't engage as much with the podcast because then I get too sidetracked. Like the whole midnight thing. Still have so many questions about that. Did that shop have Goemon? Oh, I haven't looked at that yet, Grill 10. I need to. My brain functions on like 4% right now because I've been sick for like 5 days. But I need to look into that. Yes. I always wanted to. They would catch him in time to stop him. Yeah, I think there is a bit about that in the Germany one, but it's all in German, so I have no idea. But you can find, I don't think I've ever found footage of the Gremlins ride in Australia with Beetlejuice, but there is footage of the Alf one in Germany. Last I checked. So, worth checking out just because it's cool Gremlins nonsense. They have tons of animatronic Gremlins in this, like, backlot of this quote-unquote studio just doing Gremlin things. So, a lot of fun there. I'm very excited for Gremlins 3 if they ever get that out. I would love that. I've been waiting forever. I will wait forever. I don't mind. But I would like to see it before I die, man. Because, Gremlins is a classic. It's a favorite. I feel like less people know about it and in these times, but since there's a big nostalgia for the 80s, this would kind of be the perfect time to bring it back. Because Gremlins was so popular in the 80s. Even my mom, who didn't like horror movies or anything like that, she knows Mugwai. She watches Gremlins with me. She had like a little gizmo, so the Munchies and the Hobgoblins. And the Gremlins. But thank you guys very much. That'll be it for today. Hopefully I'm going to get another podcast out soon. I want to do it. I want to have it more scheduled. This was supposed to happen Tuesday night. But because of my sickness, I didn't do it Tuesday night. He made the Gremlin Michael Winston. They have, so in the credits, they have Frank Welker. He's also part of the Gremlin noises. There's like 6 different people who are credited with the different noises. Furries would love the Gremlins. Yeah, exactly. It's perfect time. Nostalgia for 80s. There's tons of furries. They'd fucking love Gremlins. Just do Gremlins 3 already. It'll make a lot of money, I swear. Swear on me, Mom. But hopefully next time I will have more of a heads up about when I'm going to do it. Like I said, I was supposed to do it Tuesday, and then I got super sick. Still a little sick, but what do you do for a living? I make noises. Honestly, that's the best job. That's like, what's his face? Got hired to come in and do the lion roaring for the Lion King. Dude made bank and can be like, yeah, I was part of Lion King. Literally, he just picked up a trash can and was like roaring into this trash can for sound effects. They needed a horror movie with Furbies. They actually have a game that is basically a horror game with Furbies. I forget what it's called. How was the documentary on your people? It was great, Reagan. Unfortunately, Reagan's not, like, far off. That's kind of why I liked Gremlins when I was a kid. The whole Dory's Tavern scene, fucking loved that scene. The Gremlins, like, dancing, the one freaking, the Flasher Gremlin. So good. Just so good. If you have never seen Gremlins, go watch Gremlins. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. Maybe a little bit of nostalgia, rose-tinted glasses there, but it's fine. Very, very fun. Tattletale, that's it. Thank you, Sammy. Yes, Tattletale. That is the one. That's like it's basically like a Furby, excuse me, Furby horror game. And I think it's funny because it's very, like, cultish, which is what you would expect if Furbies ever started moving. You're like, this is demonic cult shit. Like, not into it. But Tattletale, yeah, that's basically, yeah, a Furby horror game. So there you go, JR. Look into that. Pretty good. Thank you guys so much, though. Hope you guys are having a wonderful December, and I hope you guys have a lovely Christmas, a lovely New Year, lovely Hanukkah, whatever it is that you're celebrating. But I will see you hopefully next time, hopefully sooner than whatever the last one was, like a month, I think, between this and the last podcast. But the next one, I already have a decision on it. There's two that I want to talk about, one that I really want to talk about, and then one that I also, it's up there. It's up there. But you guys have a lovely day, lovely Christmas, lovely New Year's Eve. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon. As far as podcast goes, I'll probably do some gaming later tonight or tomorrow. But as far as podcast goes, it'll be a couple weeks. But you guys have a lovely time.